Hey everyone, and welcome to another Sasquatch Theory podcast. On this episode, we have two different guests from the state of Arkansas who wanted to share their experiences with everyone. They had some really strange occurrences take place years ago on their property, and they wanted to get some closure on the situation, so they contacted me to talk about these experiences. And I do believe it was possibly Sasquatch. We often hear about red-eyed creatures looking through people's windows, especially when people are really young. And I don't know what the exact answer is on this situation, but it seems like these creatures like to look at people. It's kind of weird to say. They like to watch children. And yeah, you better keep an eye out on your kids if you live out in the country. But yeah, if you guys can, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and if you have a Bigfoot encounter you would like to share with me, please contact me sometime at sasquatchtheory@outlook.com. All right, guys, with all that being said, let's dive into our next set of experiences from the state of Arkansas. All right, Garrett, welcome to Sasquatch Theory. How are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good.
Good to hear. I'm glad to have you on the show. And Garrett, if you would, tell me a little bit about yourself, kind of where you're from, and your Bigfoot encounters and experiences from the very beginning, please.
Okay, my name's Garrett. I'm from Central Arkansas. I'm born and raised here, lived here most of my life. And, I'm a hunter, been out in the woods. Nothing's ever affected me. So I guess the best place to start would be at the beginning. And it's going to be, I can't give all the details because I was real young when this happened, and it's been 25 years plus since I remember it. But my parents' house is, I'm from Clinton, Arkansas, and my parents' house is out in the woods away from it. And like, we got a long driveway, like there's no one around and everything. And it all happened quickly. And like, even now I'm starting to get goosebumps thinking about it. But I remember I was around 4 or 5 years old. I got out of the bathtub and was going to my bedroom. And as soon as I walked in my bedroom, there was just a set of eyes. And it just distinctly remember it when they were looking at me. Now, the thing about my parents' house is it's up off the ground. It's got a crawl space underneath. But my bedroom is on one of the taller corners. And that window that whatever it was looking at me in is probably around 10 feet off the ground. And I just froze and I remembered, like, what is that? Just flight or flight kicked in. And, as a kid, I just ran out of the room screaming for my mom. And that was all I remember of it. Like, my dad went out and looked, seen nothing, but it wasn't until here recently, probably in the last 5 years, that I've actually correlated it, that it was probably a Bigfoot or cryptid of some sort that was looking in my window, because I've heard the stories of Sasquatches looking at kids, watching kids, peering at them through the windows. And it wasn't here until recently that I was all the dots connected for me.
Yeah, that is very interesting. And I often hear reports where they're watching kids, and that seems to be something that happens quite frequently.
And the thing about my parents' house, yeah, we're out in the, I wouldn't say we're out in the woods a little bit. If I wanted to, like when I was a kid, I would go squirrel hunting and deer hunting just like right out in my backyard. And it never really affected me to be scared of the woods. But I just remember in that moment, just fight or flight kicked in, gone. And I thought about it some more. And at that time, I don't think we had outside dogs, because after that, we always had outside dogs. I never experienced anything like that ever again. And I think maybe like having the outside dogs, maybe they would walk by or something, but they wouldn't come and investigate the house because there was dogs that would alert up to them. And and on that note, here recently, my parents still live in the same house that I grew up in. And it's here recently, their past 2 years or so, their last outside dog passed away. Well, now when my mom's home by herself, because my dad's gone hunting or doing something, We got big windows on our front porch, and she feels like something's watching her. And it could be them, it could be a random stranger or something trying to break into the house, but that's just something I've thought about here in the past few weeks or so.
Yeah, and what does
But
she
that
describe as far as being watched?
she just that creepy feeling you get, like, like, okay, something is looking at me and I don't know where it's coming from.
Yeah, I know
It
exactly what you mean. And in your old bedroom, you saw this set of eyes. What color were they and how far apart were they?
They were probably about, like, man, it's been so long, the details are just so blurry. I would say like maybe a little bit bigger than like a normal human's eyes, and they were red. That was the thing, and I thought about it now. Maybe it was the light coming from inside my bedroom, looking like going out the glass and hitting their eyes. Kind of how like dogs have that shine. I just remember seeing the red.
Yeah, that is interesting. And what do you think it was doing? Why do you think it was watching you?
Maybe it was invest walking through the house or walking through the area, investigating the area, trying to find something to eat or something, and it just was wanting to peer and look, and it seen me as 4 or 5 year old little kid.
Yeah, it makes me think that it's done it before in the past and you just didn't realize it.
Yeah, it probably could have, because that window, I never had blinds on. I had blinds on it after that. Going forward, like the rest of my life, it's just a natural. I'm gonna turn my blinds. I don't want anything potentially looking in at me.
Yeah, and I'm sure for many years you thought it was like a demon or something, like something supernatural, which I mean it could be, but what did you think initially?
Um, At first, I thought maybe it was one of my older sisters, but they were both upstairs asleep. And to be honest, I really just kind of buried it in my memories and be like, hey, and then someone mentioned something like, hey, this happened to me when I was younger. I don't know what it was, and then just go on with my day.
Yeah. And again, you don't have to give away the location, but is there like a good sized national forest nearby or a state park?
Oh, oh yes. It's probably about a 30-minute drive that there's the Ozark National Forest, because me and my dad go hunt or used to go hunting in there and stuff. And there's a lot of hardwood areas between my house and the national forest, and very few highways. So it's very possible it could have been just passing through, going somewhere else or something.
Yeah, it does sound like it. And have you guys ever experienced any paranormal activity there? Had any other strange things take place?
So on that note, I've experienced paranormal things at my parents' house, but it was more along the lines of my sister was in like a bad place, and I really feel like something attached itself to her. But and then after she got out of that bad headspace and bad place, it left because it didn't have that dark energy to feed on.
Yeah, that is frightening. What all took place exactly?
So this was years later. Like, I was in my teens, and my sister went off. My middle sister went off to college and come back home. Some bad things have been happening in her life and whatnot, and she moved back into her old bedroom. Now, I need to mention this. My parents' house is a two-story. I at first I lived on the bottom floor, like right across from my parents' bedroom. But after I become a teen and wanted some more privacy, I moved upstairs after my oldest sister moved out. I took her bedroom over. Well, my middle sister, she moved back into her bedroom. And I just remember one night she kept coming into my room. She's like, Garrett, there's something in my room. Garrett, there's something in my room. And I'm just brushing it off as whatnot. I'm like, leave me alone. I'm trying to sleep, whatnot. And she just kept doing it. And I finally got mad, and I said, fine, you can sleep in my bed. I'm going to go sleep in your bed. And then as soon as I crossed that barrier and got into her room, like, I was just uneasy. I'm like, something is off in here. I don't like it. And the way her bedroom was positioned is we have like an outside security light, like from the telephone company and everything. It would shine through her bedroom window into the room, but there was one dark corner that there was just no light coming in. There was no light going into it whatsoever. It was just darkness. And I remember I'm like, that's weird. And then right when I said like that's weird, it just started to like grow and start to slowly envelop the room. And that's when I'm like, I'm out. I got out of that room as quick as I can. I told my sister, you can sleep in my bed. I'll sleep on the couch. I'll keep an eye on it. I love you. Get some sleep. But we didn't have anything weird happen after that.
Yeah, that is terrifying, and I've heard similar reports from people, and there's been strange things captured like that on film. And one that I seen was this little girl. She was hiding under some covers, and she was like reading a book. It was lit up, and you could see like this shadow behind her as she's talking, and like she starts to like freeze up, and all of a sudden you can see this thing walk behind her, and she never sees it, but she takes off running. And whenever she leaves the room, on the video footage you can see like this shadow person like walk out of the room. It was pretty freaky. Yeah, I don't like the thought of all that, but it does happen. And have you ever heard any strange encounter stories from that area, as far as on the internet or podcasts or even locals that live around there?
It was actually the podcast that got me, or the YouTube video that got me onto you. There was a woman on your show, and she was describing the area, and I kind of have an idea of where she's talking about, and it's maybe like an hour or an hour and a half north of where I grew up. And she was like having Bigfoot encounters and a couple of like UFO encounters and paranormal encounters, and I was like, and that's what made me want to reach out to you, because it's in a very similar area. It's not too far away from where I was at.
Yeah, I think her name was Lisa, and I remember her
Yes, that.
encounters. I'm looking here on Google Maps, and I see the Ozark National Forest. I see a few cemeteries nearby in the Boston Blue Hole. Is that the right area?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's a lot of woods there, and I'm sure whatever this thing is, it's still around. Do you ever think possibly it's something else other than Bigfoot, like Dogman? I mean, I'm not trying to drag you into all that, and I'm not sure if you believe, but have you ever thought
I,
about that?
I've thought of. I only hear probably in the past couple of days that I thought maybe it could have been Dogman. I I don't think so. I think it's more along. I think it would lean more toward a Sasquatch, because we would have livestock at our house and everything, from horses, occasional cattle, and like we never had anything go missing. Maybe a couple of chickens, but we could always kind of route that to foxes or raccoons or anything like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I would tend to agree. And again, you kind of already mentioned it, but do you think the eyes were self illuminated, or was it a light from the room that were causing the eyes to light up?
I honestly I don't know. Like I said, it was 25 years or so ago now. It's like I just remember what happened, me seeing it, the red eyes, and then me hightailing it out of there.
Yeah.
It's I would I just don't know what it would be. Like I want like logically I would think it might be the light from the my bedroom going out and hitting their eyes, but then again, there's nothing logical about a 8 to 10 foot, man, hairy man looking in your window at you.
Yeah, absolutely. And what do you think these creatures are?
I think they're more along the lines of just intelligent animals, like very intelligent animals. Like they don't like humans. Like they might investigate and what's happening and stuff, but they don't want to be messed with or seen or anything. They just, maybe it causes problems for them, and then they have to move and find a new location.
Yeah, that's a great theory, and I agree with all of that. It seems like they don't like humans, but like you said, they will come in to investigate or look for food, and sometimes they get caught.
Yeah, I mean, and on the food part, growing up out in the woods, when we would get done eating, my parents would always make me take the scraps out to the edge of the woods and throw them in the woods. So that could have been one of those nights, and there was a fresh pile of scraps out there, and he's like, "Oh well, I'm going to investigate. You know, we're getting a fresh supply of food right here," and then encounters a human.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do think it was Bigfoot, possibly. And it seems like the northwest side of Arkansas is really active with Bigfoot. I mean, most of Arkansas is, anyways, but like the southern part of Missouri and the southeast side of Arkansas. And there's just a lot of waterways around there, a ton of woods, and just a lot of stuff going on. I know there's like a few Native American reservations there, like Cherokee Nation and things like that.
See, I would agree to that. Like my theory on it is like there are Bigfoots around in the area, but it's probably going to be a smaller, tighter kind of family unit than what you would get up into the Northwest and Maine and Canada regions of North America, you know, where they got mass expanses of woods. You know, you go 500 miles before, you know, running into another city or something.
Yeah, absolutely. What's your favorite Bigfoot show that you've watched on TV?
Oh, I was big into the hunting for Bigfoot back in the day when I was little. And but maybe man, it's been so long. Always liked the Monster Quest ones on the History Channel. Those always I found those entertaining.
Yeah, I like Monster Quest too. It seems like they took a scientific approach to it and they believed in what they were doing. I mean, they still had that skeptical side to them, but for the most part, they were out there trying to look for whatever evidence they could. And I just like the way they narrated the film. It was really good.
Hmm.
Have you explored around your forest to look for sign or anything like that where your parents live?
I've so I've never like purposely went out there and like looked for stuff like that. It's always been in the back of my mind, like just oh, that happened years ago, whatever, whatnot. I've I'll take hikes in the woods and stuff like that. I used to go camping by myself before I got married. Like I tell my parents, hey, I'm going to go up here and camp, for a day or two. I'll be back this time. And I never experienced anything, but I I will say this: I always had a firearm with me, and not just for potential Bigfoots, but we got bears here in Arkansas, and I was always adequately protected when I would go and do stuff like that.
Yeah, that's a good idea. And I mean, I don't think it would be a bad idea to go out there and look for some sign. Maybe you'll find some structures or footprint or something along the lines of that.
I very well could, because like I said, my mom, she when my dad's gone, she'll be like she'll get these weird feelings that something's watching her, and and then she'll call the police and they'll come out and like scan the woods with a big spotlight, and just to be safe.
Yeah, so she has called the cops before it's gotten that bad, huh?
Yeah, like it's just one of those weird. She gets these weird feelings, and I don't blame her. Like, because my parents are they're back in the woods a little bit. Like you can't see the main dirt road from my parents' house. Our driveway is probably around 300 yards long.
Yeah, that reminds me of where I had my Bigfoot encounters at. It was actually where my parents live now and where I grew up at. And it's a long driveway, it's a dead end road. And there just seems to be a lot of animal activity there as far as like whitetails, turkey, a lot of owls, squirrels, and just a bunch of little critters. And that's where I had my encounters at. It's an active area and it's just a good place to be.
Yeah, I mean, my parents they have herds of whitetail come across their front yard. They'll just be going from one set of the woods over to the next set of the woods. Dad's called them his pet deer because he never does anything, but yeah, we have wildlife all around.
Yeah. And have you guys ever seen a deer in the yard with its front leg broken? Anything like that?
Uh, I've never seen anything like that. I will say we used to have a pet deer, it was a hot summer and its mama died, and we picked it up, took it home, nursed it back to health, and it acted like a dog to us, and we would keep it out in a pen. But there was one night that we went out there to feed it, and it was missing one of its front legs. Now, and that could be chalked up, could have been a bear, could have been a bobcat, even a random mountain lion, because they are in Arkansas. But it was one of those. I'm like, we have seen deer with broken legs and broken missing legs.
Yeah, that is interesting. The theory is the Sasquatch will break the front leg and come back later to finish off the job.
See, I never knew that.
Yeah. It happened here, and it was happening at the killing fields. I investigated an area at a farm, and the guy had a bunch of trail cam videos of really good sized bucks with their front legs broken, and they were just like dangling. And yeah, we think it was Bigfoot because he was having activity at the time.
See, yeah, that's a new piece of information, which that actually correlates because of like a month or so later, that deer, and it was still a fawn. It lost its spots, but it was just straight up gone out of the pen we used to keep it in. No blood, no nothing.
Yeah, that is strange. I'm
And
assuming you
we had
guys have a lot of activity going on there, but maybe it happens when you guys aren't outside, and maybe the Sasquatch are more discreet about the activity.
they're I would honestly say they're probably more discreet because we live out in the woods. Me and my dad, we hunt, so every late summer, early fall, we take our guns out there and sight them in, or maybe we're just wanting to do a little plinking, and we just go out, and I'll drive out to his house, bring my guns, and we'll go and just shoot some targets.
Yeah, that is interesting. Maybe go out there and do some owl hoots, see what replies. Maybe try to leave some peanut butter, some chocolate, and see what takes it. And, like whenever your mom feels like she's being watched, maybe you can go out there and just try to investigate a little bit.
I might actually be up for that.
Yeah. Well, make sure you have a firearm and just be careful out there because you never know. That red-eyed creature could be around.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen bears. I haven't seen them around our house, but I've seen them around in the area and stuff before, and it's always better to be safe than sorry.
Yeah, absolutely. Most of the red-eyed creatures that people have spotted are in southern Missouri, and you're in northern Arkansas, so that is interesting.
Yeah, I'd say my parents' house. I've always made the joke, like where I'm from, it's like right at the foothills of the Ozarks. So it's all kind of small hills and flat for a little bit, but then once you get into Clinton and stuff, it becomes you're in the Ozarks. It's mountains and hollers and everything.
Yeah. And do your parents have a lot of neighbors nearby?
I mean, we do, but I'm also used to like my neighbor. Oh, I'll go visit my neighbors or something, and then hop on the four wheeler and drive down the road for 10 or 15 minutes.
Yeah, maybe you can ask some of the neighbors if they've ever experienced anything strange in the area.
Yeah, there's a couple I bet that have experience because they've got some livestock around and big horse pastures and everything.
Yeah. I wonder if they've had any missing cattle or animals taken off their land or if they've ever seen anything.
It'd definitely be something to ask them. Like now, I'm intrigued and want to go and start investigating some of this stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you find anything in the future, feel free to reach out to me and let me know what you found.
Yes, sir. Will do.
All right, Garrett. I think that pretty well covers your encounter, and I do appreciate you for reaching out to me and sharing your experience here on Sasquatch Theory.
Yep. Thank you, sir. Thanks for having me. I'm glad I was able to reach out and get a hold of you.
Yeah, absolutely. And you take care and be safe, and I'll be praying for your mom and your family.
Thank you, sir.
Yep. Thank you, and goodbye, my friend. All right, that was our first guest from the state of Arkansas. Now let's give our next guest a call and see what he has to say. All right, Heath, welcome to Sasquatch Theory. How are you doing today?
Doing good.
Good to hear. Heath, if you would, tell me a little bit about yourself, kind of where you're from, and your Bigfoot encounters and experiences from the very beginning, please.
All right. Yeah, I'm a self-employed electrician from Central Arkansas. Grew up out in the rural areas. Always been around farms and stuff like that. Uh, Played out in the woods as kids. We didn't have video games and all that, so we were constantly out in the woods. I mean, from daylight till dark. If we weren't in school, so yeah, real familiar with woods and been out in them a lot. And, uh,
Okay, so you're really
but
familiar with the outdoors.
yeah, oh yeah.
Okay. So when did your first experience take place? What were you doing that day? And if you can, put me in your shoes.
Okay, well, it was me and a friend of mine. I'm gonna say we were about 10 years old because I just got a shotgun that my dad had bought me. It was a little single shot Harrington Richardson 20 gauge shotgun, and we were out squirrel hunting. And it was me and my other buddy, and we were out. It was east side of the Washita River and what they call the Etta Bottoms, and we were squirrel hunting out there. We were just walking down this little log road. The log. When I say, well, old log road. When I say log roads around here, it's like really old. Stuff that has all growed up. Not any big trees growing in the middle of them or anything, because people still use them, for trails and what have you. But it was, you know, anyway. So we're walking down this log road and looking for squirrels and chit chatting, and all of a sudden we noticed a big print in the road there, and it was like November, late November. Been raining, rainy season, cold, and probably rained all night that night before, and so the ground was real wet, good for hunting, so you could sneak up on stuff without being heard. And so anyway, we're walking down this road and we come across these big tracks, and we look at them, and it just looked like a bare foot, you know, in the road, and it was humongous. And we both looked at each other and we're like, what in the world? Well, so we start talking amongst ourselves, trying to figure out what in the world we're seeing here. And uh, as we talked to each other about it, one of us said, well, there's a railroad track just about half a mile through the woods. It's probably a hobo. They got old hobo camps down there, is what we'd always heard. So we're thinking it was probably a hobo. And then the other one says, no, it's, you know, that foot's too big. And who would be out here this time of year, in the winter without something wrapped around their feet at least? They were froze to death. So we're just trying to figure out what it is. And so anyway, we just decided to see if there's more. So we kept walking down the road, and sure enough, we seen another one. And about that time, we saw what really amazed us is we saw a bear track in the road, and that really amazed us more than the big footprint we just saw, because there wasn't any bear around here. Hadn't been since our grandpas were kids. We all knew that, but we knew what bear tracks looked like because we all went through Boy Scouts back then. I was born in '71 and raised up. Boy Scouts were big in our little country school that we went to, and you had to learn all these tracks just to get your patches. So we knew, that was bear track. It was like, wow, what in the world is bear doing out here?
And so we just start following the bear tracks then, and we noticed that the tracks are both going in the same direction. And we get up to a little curve in the log road, and as soon as we get around the curve there, man, the ground was just all tore up in the road. There was big clumps of hair all in the road and blood everywhere. And we were just, our jaws dropped, we were just like, this was freaking us out. And we didn't know what was going on. And so after we kind of come together for a minute, we're like, we're going to check this out. So we just walk up to it and start looking at all of it. And the bear tracks just ended. We didn't see any more bear tracks. We looked all around there and couldn't find any more bear tracks. And it looked like, which I'd never seen bear hair before, but that's what we figured it was. It was probably, I don't know, 3-4 inches long or something like that, and it was real coarse, but blood everywhere, ground tore up. Uh, so the last footprint we seen was stepping off of the road into the woods, and there was like this, it just looked like something had been drug off of the road from right there, so we sit and talked about it, and we're like, man, something killed something here and drug it off into the woods. That's all we could figure. Anyway, we left. We got creeped out and just went home, and we hardly ever even talked about that again. I mean, maybe once or twice while we were kids, but all through, high school, junior high, we never talked about it. And years later, I mean, I was working on his son's house. I got a call to go work on his son's house, and he showed up over there. And this was just, I don't know, maybe 4 years ago. And I asked him, I said, man, his name was Jesse. I said, Jesse, did you ever tell anybody about what happened, about that? And he just said, hell no. And I said, why not, man? He's like, man, he said, I wouldn't, he said, everybody would have thought I was crazy. He said, I don't want people thinking I'm crazy. I said, you mean you never even told your mom and dad or your son or anybody? And he said, no. He said, I never told anybody. He said, I never talked about it. He said, right now this is the only time I've talked about it since me and you talked about it with kids. And I'm like, wow, okay. So, but that's the way a lot of people are around here, They see weird stuff and they're not going to say nothing. They'll just keep it to themselves.
Yeah,
But,
absolutely.
So, that's all that happened there. We didn't see anything. So, I mean, my experiences aren't really that, great or anything, but I mean, it needs to be told anyway, so people will know. But so when we were, oh, it was a few years later. I was probably maybe 12 or 13, and we were all camping out. This was on up in the hills a little bit, what we call hills here. It wasn't down by the Edda Bottoms. I live up kind of in some hills here on a ridge, but um, we were up in the woods. All of us kids that grew up on this road out here in this ridge, we all hung out together and camped out on the weekends. And so we were all camping out that weekend. We had some fort built out in the woods out there, and we were all hanging out at the fort, had a campfire going, probably been cooked us something to eat or something, just hanging out talking. And best I remember, we all decided to walk down the trail, and this was the middle of the night. It was dark, it was pitch black, and I don't even think there was a moon out that night. It was really dark. If it was coming up late or it already went down. But Um, the best I remember, we were hearing something out in the woods, like somebody knocking on something or using a hatchet or something. Um, we thought maybe it was some of the older kids. It was like our brothers, older brothers or something. It was out there messing around or something. So we were gonna go investigate it, see what was going on. We didn't have no flashlight or anything, so we're just walking through the woods in the dark and down this trail. You could barely even see the trail. And we get down there a pretty good ways away from where we were camping, probably about, I don't know, 300 yards away from our camp. And all of a sudden, man, it was like I could feel it before it ever even happened. I just felt something, in the air. I was already starting to get tense. And all of a sudden, something just let out this growl, roar, yell. I don't know what it was. I'd never heard anything like it. I mean, it made every fiber in your body just uh, come to life. It was, you felt like buckwheat. Felt like your hair was just standing straight up. Every hair on your body was standing up, and everybody just froze. And when it quit growling or yelling or whatever it did, we all just screamed like little girls that had just come out of a haunted house. We all just screamed and just bolted, turned around, and started running frantically back to our uh, our little fort. And I couldn't even see. I couldn't see very good in the dark anyway, and needed glasses in. Didn't even know it. And I'm holding on to my buddy's shirt tail, trying to keep up so I don't hit a tree. But we ran all the way back to that fort and just scared to death. And something funny about that is, and I didn't even think about it until just recently, is uh, we had problems with our forts always getting demolished and tore down, and we'd always blame it on our big brothers. And theirs would get tore down, and we didn't ever tear theirs down. We were scared they'd beat us up or catch us doing it. So, but theirs would always get tore down, and they would blame it on us. And I look back now and I'm like, what was really tearing down all of our forts? I mean, it got so bad to where, and we spent a lot of time and effort building those forts. I mean, some of them were nice, made out of wood and had real doors and stuff on them, and put bunk beds in them, all that. But something was tearing them up, and we wound up digging a gigantic hole and building us an underground fort so nobody could find it and tear it up because we got tired of everybody tearing our forts up. But anyway, so yeah, we talked about that amongst each ourselves, and nobody, someone would say, "Man, that was a bear," and the other one would say, "No, that was a wild hog," or the other one would say, "It sounded like a wildcat to me." And you know, to me, it didn't sound like any of them, but it sounded like all of them together. And I would even throw crocodile in there, because like the ending just had this deep rumble sound at the end of his uh, growl like thing. It was weird. I never heard anything like it. It just scared us to death. And we got wildcats there. We got cougars, and we got black panthers. And a lot of people don't believe you when you tell them that, but yeah, we have black panthers out here. Uh, the dairy farmers and people down the road have been seeing them for years and still see them. But we've all heard them. We know what they sound like. They sound like an old crazy woman screaming in the woods. But um, so yeah, it was a mystery for years. I never could figure out what that was. Just didn't ever think about it much more. And then one night when I was like 35 years old, I'm sitting in my living room one night watching the PBS documentary on Channel 2, and it was some scientists that had went up to, it was either Canada or Alaska, They went up there to set up a camp. They had a lot of reports of Yeti or Sasquatch up there, and they'd set up microphones and recorders and video cameras, stuff like that, and they'd go up there and stay for a few weeks, and then they would come back and then go back up there, a couple of months later or something, and just take all that. Anyway, they were playing some of the footage, and man, I was sitting there listening to that stuff, and then I heard this one screamish like growl that they had recorded, and it was like I relived that whole experience all over again. Just sent chills up and down my body, and I knew when I heard that, I was like, that is what we heard that night. That's the first time I've heard that since then, but that was it. So, but yeah, that's pretty much all my experience with Bigfoot. I mean, I've been out hunting before and thought I've seen things, but it's hard to say, when you're hunting, your eyes start playing tricks on you when you've been sitting there staring at the woods forever. Uh, but yeah, I've heard y'all talk about people that have these encounters, have had other encounters, and I kind of found that interesting because I have had other encounters that weren't like that, didn't have anything to do with Bigfoot. Like one night we were sitting well, it wasn't at night, it was actually in the evening. The sun had just set, but it was still daylight. And we were sitting in my front yard. We just got back from doing some work. I was helping some buddies of mine do some concrete finishing. And we were all sitting in my buddy's truck, and there was four of us squeezed in the cab. And we were just sitting there talking. And all of a sudden, man, just out of the corner of my eye, I was kind of sitting in the middle. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw something off to my right out in my field there. And I turned and looked, and at the same time, I could tell everybody else was turning and looking, and it was like this orange ball that just was zipping in the air, and then it just came right up into my yard and just hovered there. And it was kind of just hovering there for a second, then it kind of just went left to right, kind of back and forth. And then the next thing I know, it sits still for a second, and then it just zipped off. I mean, I've never seen anything go that fast. It just went out of sight like instantly, you know. But yeah, that was weird. And all of our jaws were just dropped, our mouths were open, just sitting there looking. And then, after about 3 or 4 seconds, we all looked at each other and said, "What the hell?" What in the world was that, man? We were all just kind of freaking out there for a second. And anyway, yeah, it was four of us that seen that all at once.
Yeah, that is interesting. Whenever I had some strange experiences here at my place, I seen two orange orbs floating through the woods. And it wasn't like a flashlight or a cell phone. Like these were solid orbs, probably about the size of a volleyball, maybe a little bit smaller, but they were moving through the woods after I heard these three whistles. And I wasn't sure what the whistles were. And shortly after those experiences, I had Bigfoot encounters. So I think they're tied into Bigfoot. I can't say that for sure, but somehow it's associated to the activity.
It's kind of weird, and the stuff that we were sitting in the truck talking about, was kind of a timely thing. We were talking about things that most people don't talk about, like conspiracy type stuff. And the next thing we know, this thing shows up, and it was weird. It was really weird.
Yeah, that's interesting. So you were talking about strange things that are taking place on this planet, and then you seen the orbs.
Yeah, we were more talking about, government type conspiracies and, world order type conspiracy stuff. We were sitting there talking about that kind of stuff. We weren't really talking about aliens or spaceships or Bigfoot, nothing like that. We were talking about things that was concerning the world and the economy type stuff. Um, and next thing we know, this thing shows up. It was really weird. But yeah, it zipped into my yard, and came around the tree. You could see it come around the trees, and then just came right over beside us, like we were facing south, and it come from the southwest and moved around the trees and just zipped over here straight west of us, almost northwest, and just sit right beside us. And then it bobbed a couple of times back and forth, and then it stopped still again. And the next thing I know, it just zipped back the same way it came, and it was gone.
Yeah,
And
that's
that's
interesting.
first time I ever seen anything like that. Yeah, I was just really. It didn't freak me out, or anything, but it was pretty amazing.
Yeah, sometimes I wonder if like they know if you're talking about them, or I don't know. This one time on the river, me and my ex, we were talking about the show Finding Bigfoot. We did some tree knocks, some whoops that we heard on the show, and then a giant tree crashed down across the river. And about 30 minutes after that, something screamed on our side of the river, and it was just weird. I don't know. There's been times when I've been out there in the woods and I was thinking about like them wood knocking and they would knock. I know that sounds weird, but I'm just saying, like, what are the odds?
Yeah, no, there's probably some things that's happened, that I just don't recount because I just wrote it off. But I do know that I've been out in these woods several times, and I just feel something. I'll be out there sitting and hunting, and I just get this really bad feeling, just like I did that time before we heard that thing scream. I already had a feeling before we ever even heard it. It's hard to explain, but I just felt something. It's like something in the air or something. But I've been out in the woods and felt that, and I'll just get up and leave. I'm like, "Yeah, it's time to go." You know, I don't like this feeling. It's hard to explain, but yeah, I really don't. From the things that I've seen, like on a lot of your shows too, which I've never really got into this kind of stuff until just here recently. I've been watching some of y'all stuff, and that's what made me think, I'll have to tell them about what happened to us when we were kids. But um, I've never seen anything to make me believe that, Bigfoots are out to hurt people. I have seen things where it seemed like they helped people, and there was definitely a lot of instances where they could have hurt somebody and they didn't. Um, yeah, so but I think there's other things out there that definitely would want to hurt you. Like I've been hearing about the dog man, they call it. It's like a werewolf type thing. That thing seems really evil. It always seems like when that thing's around, there's no Bigfoots around. But when Bigfoot's around, then that thing's not around. So it kind of makes you wonder, is Sasquatch like some kind of protector, or I don't know. I'm not saying he is. I'm just, kind of makes you wonder.
Yeah, it does. It's very interesting that something was tearing down your guys' forts, and I'm glad you were able to connect the dots with that. And it could be possible as the Sasquatch, like maybe they don't want people building these forts out in the woods if they're around.
Yeah. Well, our brothers always denied it, and we just thought they were lying. Man, they're lying. They're tearing our fort down. And and then we come to the conclusion, well, maybe it's somebody else. It's maybe somebody else is coming and tearing our forts down. Some other kid is. But yeah, now I look back at it, and it makes me wonder. Because this place that we were building our forts, there's never. It's small. It's not way out in the national forest or nothing. Yes, there are houses and roads, within a half a mile of that or whatever. But there's so many springs there, and nobody ever goes to that spot. I mean, there's never anybody there. It's like private land that somebody owns that they never even come to. They don't use for anything. Um, yeah, and it's got a whole bunch of natural springs on it, and where all these springs come into this creek. It's a spring-fed creek. A lot of springs run into it, and they can't cut the woods around the creeks and springs, so it's all like pretty good canopy. A lot of trees have been there for a long time. Nut-bearing trees and stuff like that. So um, yeah, a lot of deer around here too. Good sized deer. A lot of wildlife.
Yeah, there certainly is. So that vocalization that you heard, it sounded like, I don't know. I mean, the best way to describe it is like a monster. You heard the sound and it kind of made you think of different animals put together into one.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, because I never heard an animal that sounded like that. Never heard one. Yeah, it just that's what scared us so bad. I mean, if it had sounded like a wild hog or something, we wouldn't have been near as scared. We would have just picked up some sticks or something and been ready to, run still, but we would have tried to defend ourselves. But whatever that was, it just didn't register. I'm sure that every other kid there was feeling the same thing I was feeling. I think it's just born in us.
Yeah,
I think
absolutely.
we can feel things. I think God wired us that way.
Yeah, I think so too. So are you still living out in the country, or are you like in a suburb area?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a small town anyway. But yeah, we're about 3 miles out of town, and it's just it's a dairy farm behind us, and big dairy farm just right down the road here, and then there's just a big valley with springs and creeks out in front of our house, a whole bunch of spring-fed ponds. Um, yeah, there's like eight, 7 or 8 spring-fed ponds just right here by our house. Yeah, there's a lot of springs out here, a lot of fresh water. We never had to come home and get a drink of water in the summertime when we were playing in the woods. We'd leave out here in the mornings and wouldn't come back till dark. We'd get a drink in the spring out in the woods. We got thirsty.
Yeah, it sounds like it's an excellent place for these creatures to thrive in. And you have a chance to see one since you live out in the woods. Do you find yourself listening for sounds whenever it gets dark?
No, like I said, I just when I run across your channel on here, it just made me start thinking about all that stuff again when I was a kid. And, um, you know, never really. I mean, when I go in the woods, I'm a changed man. Believe me, I don't. I don't go out there without something. At least a 45 pistol on or something. I know better than that. But I've never. I ain't gonna say I've never heard anything out there that was kind of, but I've just, haven't had anything happen like that since I was a kid. You know what I mean? So I have heard weird things in the woods, but I just kind of write it off. I'm probably going to start being more attentive, now. And I've been hearing some of y'all's sounds. So that one that we heard didn't sound like most of these sounds that I've been hearing. I just watched one of your videos here the other night. I think you were up in Missouri on a river. It's like as soon as you pulled up there, you said you started hearing the thing, or you heard it as soon as you got out of the car. Anyway, y'all had it. You could hear it on your videotape. And they weren't doing that, whoa, like that. This was just like it was a grunty growl, like just warning us to get away from them or something, when we were kids. That one time that we heard it, we didn't ever hear them yelling out in the woods and other woods, but we thought we heard somebody using an axe or something down there, or knocking on the trees. We didn't ever have any idea that Bigfoot did something like that. We just we didn't know all that stuff back then. Nobody talked about that stuff. But now that I'm older, and I realize, okay, that's, that could have been what it was.
Yeah, very well could have been. And like you said, there are other things out there in the woods, especially in the Ozarks. So you always have to watch your back. I mean, there's plenty of people that live out here that have never seen or heard anything, but they're out there nonetheless.
Yeah. There is where we heard that at, there is a place not far from there that it was like a little thicket in the middle of a little meadow. And it was kind of weird how that was too. It was a little thicket right out in the middle of this little meadow. And it was always just full of all kinds of animal bones. And we always thought, it's probably Black Panther or cougar or something, you know, and it's very well what it could have been. But it was always just full of animal bones there, all kinds of bones. It was like a graveyard,
Yeah, I've had people
graveyard of
report that to
animal
me.
bones.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that is interesting. There was a guy from Colorado, he filmed it, and there was all kinds of bones. There was like, I don't know, like duck skeletons, elk skulls, I don't know, just all kinds of critters just scattered throughout the area. And it was
Yeah.
extremely unusual. He ended up having some encounters out there as well. And it was just a boneyard, but we don't know what made it. Some people said mountain lions, some people said Sasquatch. It's hard to say.
Yeah, same here. It's hard to say, because there are Black Panthers and cougars around here, bobcats, so it could have been any of that. I just, we never saw any other tracks around here, and there's a lot of sandy areas, especially around that creek. Man, it's called Kokomo Creek, and it's just like pure white sand when it floods down there. It looks like Pensacola Beach or something, but you'd think you would see tracks or something, but we sure did down there in the Etta Bottoms. We saw, and there ain't no mistaking that. That wasn't no hobo. There ain't no hobo that big. There ain't no hobo that big. That foot was gigantic.
Yeah, it's too bad you couldn't cast the tracks and take photos of them, but I'm sure back then you guys didn't know what to make of it.
No, we didn't. We really didn't. We kind of come to the conclusion. We were wondering, it's like, man, is this Bigfoot? And this is when we really first even heard about Bigfoot. So, but we didn't, back then we didn't believe in Bigfoot. It was like, ain't no Bigfoot. It's just somebody dressing up in costumes. What we thought. But after we seen those tracks, we didn't know what to think. We really didn't. And I guess it wasn't until people started coming out, and admitting that they've seen these things and heard these things and had encounters with these things that you kind of say, okay, It probably was Bigfoot then, What else could it have been?
Yeah, absolutely. And they're out there. There's a lot of encounter stories from Central Arkansas and the Boggy Creek story. It's from that
Oh,
area
yeah.
or around there. Have you ever been to Boggy Creek?
Oh, yeah. I used to go to church camp there all the time. We used to actually, our choir director of our church was raised up down there. His family um, took care of that church camp down there, and we used to ask him about it, and he just didn't ever want to talk about it. It seemed like, best I remember, when we asked him about it, he just wouldn't say nothing, walk off, kind of. We just thought maybe he thought we were being silly or something, but maybe he knew something and just didn't want to relive talking about it or something. I don't know. Maybe he never saw anything. I don't know.
Yeah, I think you said it
But
best
yeah,
earlier. There's a lot of people that probably see these things or hear them out in the woods and just don't want to talk about it.
yeah. It makes me wonder if myself, have I seen something since then and just wrote it off, discounted it. And you can do that, your mind to do that. You can just kind of write things off and not want to think about it and kind of just make it disappear like, people actually do that to themselves, it's like uh, self-preservation mechanism, yeah,
Yeah,
keep
absolutely.
you from going crazy, especially when you don't have anybody to talk to about it.
Yeah, that's the worst part. I mean, even if you don't go on a show like this, it'd be cool if you could like tell your wife or your kids, but there's a lot of people that I've interviewed that don't even tell their own wife, and I'm sure that's difficult.
Oh yeah, that's like with my buddy Jesse. He never told anybody. He went his whole life, and he just passed away here 2 years ago, and never took that to the grave with him. I was the only other person that knew, as far as he knew. I've told people. I've told my friends. I probably came home, and told my mom and dad after it happened. I wasn't never like that. I was scared of telling the truth. If somebody don't believe me, they just don't believe me. But as you get older, you realize some things you just need to keep your mouth shut about, or people will think you're crazy. But yeah, when I was a kid, I'd tell mom, and dad anything. If it was the truth, I wasn't scared to tell them. But yeah, some people just take it to the grave with them.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I couldn't keep my mouth shut about it. I had to start this channel and talk to people about it. So,
Yeah, I'm glad you did, man, because people need to get things off their chest, and they need a community where they feel comfortable doing it. I think you've done a good thing. Uh, and just about everybody I've heard on your channel, I believe, uh, especially that 64-year-old guy that went to Mina, wasn't that you that recounted his thing? Or that was him talking, wasn't
yeah, the guy
it?
that got trapped underneath the logs, is that the one?
Yes, that was, yeah, you could tell that guy had a little uh, trauma, from that still,
Oh,
even
yeah.
just talking about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it took him like over a year to finally open up to me. And I think before that, he told his encounters to another channel, but the guy just read it off. I don't know, like you could tell whenever he was talking that it really affected him. And
Yeah,
I mean, I can't
yeah,
imagine.
you can hear it in people's voices, usually. Uh, there was another guy on one of yours that was talking about the dog man, that come up by his deer stand. I mean, that guy sounded totally legit. I would have never, I've seen stuff on the YouTube just flicking through and it'd say dog man. I'm like, oh, that's bull, just going past. I'm like, oh, listen to that. But when I heard that guy's testimony, I was like, man, that dude was for real. That guy was telling the truth. And that scares the living crap out of me to think that there's something like that out there in the woods, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's freaky to think about that, especially when it gets dark outside. It's like, try not to think of Dogman. Try not to think of Dogman.
Yeah, man, you gotta have faith. You gotta know the Lord's with you. If he's with you, better hope he is. If he's not, you better make that right. Yeah, I don't worry too much, you know. I just when I get the feeling that I need to leave and if I'm out in the woods, and I do, you know. But I know I've got a great protector following me wherever I go. So, and especially if it's demonic, I'm not going to be scared of it because they can't touch me.
Yep, I agree with that. And hopefully I'm protected in the future whenever I go out there, because I'm sure I'm going to be camping in a lot of remote areas, and you just have to keep your cool. That's the best thing you can do.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, just don't provoke nothing, you know.
Yeah, I'll try
I
not
guess
to.
if I ever come up, you know, had an encounter with one, I think the first thing I'd do is just put my hands up like the Indians used to do. Say how, you know, show him I got 5 fingers and not 6.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Heath, I think that pretty well covers your experiences, and I do appreciate you for contacting me and telling me about them.
Yeah, no problem. No problem. I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you ever do encounter anything in the future, feel free to contact me.
Sure, man. Sure will. I hope I don't, but if I do, yeah, you'll be the first I call.
Yeah, I hope you don't either.
Besides
But
the sheriff.
yeah, you never know though where you live at. These things are around, and you're aware of them, so you might see one.
Yeah. Well, there's not a whole lot of talk about them around here. So, but I know the people around here too. If somebody's seen one, they'd keep it to themselves. So, yeah, if I ever see anything, I'll let you know. Appreciate your time.
Yeah, you too, and you have a great evening, my friend.
All right, man. You too.
All right, take care, and it was good talking with you.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye. All right, Garrett and Heath, thank you very much for sharing your experiences from the state of Arkansas. I couldn't imagine seeing red eyes looking through my window. That would really creep me out. And honestly, I have never seen that before, but anytime I'm out in the woods, I'm always looking for red eyes, just because when I hear those types of encounters, they just really stick with me, kind of like Dogman. And I've had some strange activity at the window at my old place. That I've had UFO activity, Bigfoot activity, and paranormal activity. Something would go up to the window and tap on it, tap, tap, tap. And I'd always look, and there would never be anything there. And one time I heard the taps on the window, but it sounded really clicky, like something was clicking nails on the window. Click, click, click. And I grabbed my 9, ran outside, and I ran around the house about 3 times, and there was just nothing there. For the longest time, I thought it was paranormal activity, which it very well could have been, because there were things taking place inside the house. But later, I started wondering, maybe it was Sasquatch or just something unknown. I don't know what it was. Maybe it could have been a person, but for some reason, they like to spy on people, and you have to keep an open mind about it, because it could happen to you. And a lot of people are closed-minded to the activity, but a lot of times people who are very doubtful end up having these experiences, and that's why people believe. That's why people are so into the subject, because they were extremely doubtful and it happened to them one day. So that's what makes us a believer. But yeah, I appreciate every single one of you for listening today to the video. And if you guys can, please support the channel in any way. You guys can purchase some merchandise, make a PayPal donation, make a donation through the thanks button, or even leave a comment down below. But nonetheless, you guys watching these videos is the most supportive thing you could do. So I really appreciate everyone for tuning in today. And until the next one, Be safe out there in the forest.